Inside a brightly lit operating room, the air was thick with urgency and fear. Every second felt like a battle between life and death. A Navy SEAL lay unconscious on the table, his body torn apart by shrapnel, his uniform soaked in his own blood. The surgical lights glared down on his pale face while a team of doctors worked desperately to keep his fading pulse alive. Commands filled the air like rapid fire: clamp, suction, move faster, as sweat rolled down faces and hands trembled under the pressure. At the head of the table, the chief surgeon barked orders, his voice sharp enough to cut through the noise of machines. His frustration was palpable, this was slipping beyond his control. Then, his eyes landed on a quiet figure standing at his side, a nurse. She was young, composed, her movements clean and precise, untouched by the chaos surrounding her. But to the surgeon, she was just another assistant. "You're only a nurse," he snapped, waving her off. "Stay out of the way." She didn't argue. She didn't even flinch. She just kept watching, her eyes steady, her gloved hands poised for whatever came next. What the surgeon didn't know, what no one in that room could have guessed, was that she carried within her a history that belonged on battlefields, not in hospital corridors. And that truth was about to surface when the man on the table, half conscious, bleeding out, murmured something that froze every soul in the room. "You have no idea who she is," he gasped. The words hit like a thunderclap. The room went still except for the slow, haunting beep of the heart monitor. The surgeon frowned, confused. The nurse didn't look up. She simply pressed harder on the wound, her expression unreadable. The SEAL's voice cracked again, barely audible, yet clear enough for all to hear. "Angel." It wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was a name, a call sign. The surgeons exchanged quick, startled glances. They had heard that name before, whispered in rumor, half-believed stories told among soldiers. A legend that lived only in the shadows of war. The nurse's eyes flickered for a moment, revealing something deep and buried. But she said nothing. She gave calm, controlled instructions to the team, orders so sharp and confident that even the chief surgeon hesitated before realizing he was now following her lead. For hours they worked under her direction. Blood transfusions were rushed in, equipment was changed out again and again. The fight to keep the SEAL alive became more brutal by the minute. His pulse would crash, then rise, then crash again. Through it all, she never lost control. Her voice stayed steady. Her touch remained exact. It wasn't just training, it was instinct born from war. Finally, when the first light of dawn broke through the hospital windows, the beeping on the monitor evened out. The SEAL's breathing steadied. Against every prediction, he had survived. The tension in the room broke like a dam. Nurses leaned against walls, exhausted. The surgeon tore off his gloves, his pride melting into disbelief. His voice, once commanding, came out quiet now. "Who are you?" he asked. She pulled down her mask slowly. Her face was pale but calm. "I'm just a nurse," she said simply. But the surgeon knew that wasn't true. And the SEAL, still clinging to consciousness, knew it too. Her story began long before that night. Years earlier, she had worn the uniform herself. She was 22 when she first stepped into combat boots, a medic in a world that didn't expect her to last a week. She had no illusions about what lay ahead. She would be doubted, dismissed, tested beyond endurance. But she also knew that courage doesn't come from rank, it comes from what you do when everything around you is falling apart. Her first mission was in Afghanistan, a convoy ambushed, vehicles burning, soldiers pinned down in a narrow valley with no air support. When the radio call screamed for a medic, she didn't wait for backup. She ran straight into the chaos, bullets cutting the air, explosions shaking the ground. She dragged the wounded one by one behind cover, hands covered in blood, heart hammering but never faltering. When the morphine ran out, she used pressure and grit. When bandages ran dry, she tore strips from her own uniform. She refused to stop until every breathing man was pulled from that kill zone. By dawn, they started calling her Angel. It wasn't a name she chose, it was one given to her by men who swore she had appeared from nowhere, fearless and untouchable, saving lives when all hope was gone. From that day on, the name followed her through every mission. The higher-ups buried her records in classified files, but soldiers remembered. She became a legend whispered around campfires, a ghost of mercy moving through war. Years later, when her service ended, she didn't seek medals or recognition. She walked away quietly. The war had taken enough from her. She traded her rifle for scrubs, her battlefield for the sterile halls of a hospital. She wanted to heal without hearing gunfire. She wanted peace, even if it meant anonymity. But some names never fade, and some legacies never die. Back in that hospital, after the surgery, the chief surgeon sat alone long after she left the room. Her calm voice and steady hands haunted him. He realized how blind he'd been, how easily he had dismissed the quiet strength standing beside him. He had reduced her to a title, never seeing the warrior beneath. Weeks later, when the SEAL finally regained full consciousness, his first words weren't about his wounds. "Did Angel save me?" he whispered. The nurse standing by his bed smiled faintly, but she didn't answer. She never confirmed it. She never denied it. She didn't need to. Some truths are sacred, they live quietly in the spaces between words. The surgeon changed after that day. He never again underestimated anyone in his operating room. He learned that strength doesn't always shout, it often stands silent, calm, and unwavering. And somewhere in that hospital, Angel continued her work. No medals, no fanfare, just a nurse among others. Yet every time she walked into a room, there was something about her presence, a quiet authority, a calm under pressure, that reminded people they were standing beside someone extraordinary. Her legend never faded. Soldiers still tell her story, passing it on like a secret. Some say she saved whole squads. Others claim she faced down death itself. But the truth is far simpler. She was a healer who refused to let fear decide who lived and who didn't. She was a woman who carried the weight of battle silently and chose compassion over glory. And that's why, in that operating room, when the SEAL called her name, time seemed to stop. Because in that moment, everyone realized that heroes don't always wear medals or command troops. Sometimes, they wear scrubs and stand quietly in the corner until the world needs them to lead. And she led, not with rank, not with pride, but with unshakable grace. Because there is no such thing as only a nurse. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Real Mission Stories. Your support keeps these voices alive, the voices of those who served, sacrificed, and continue to heal in silence.